Still stay together with your loved ones and friends using Bonga Points. Share your story or video of how you've helped a fellow Kenyan to our FB page NTV Kenya, Twitter page at NTV Kenya, Instagram at NTV Kenya, SMS 20686 or our WhatsApp number 0745 925 002.
Good morning, Janet.
Wow! And you are?
I'm Casey. Now help you with anything to do with your KCB bank account. Pay bills, transfers, statements.
You're hired.
I'm your internet banking security ninja. I'm your 24/7 personal assistant.
Super.
So, we can always talk about your account, online, whenever you like. Need a ride?
Let's go.
Alrighty. With you anywhere, anytime.
Register at your nearest branch for KCB Internet Banking today.
This is NTV.
Jina la corona ulilipuka mwaka jana Wuhan nchini China. Viongozi pamoja na wananchi sote tulidhani ni homa ya kawaida. Wanasayansi wakiwa na watafiti waliamua angalau kuisaka tiba yake. Kilichotushangaza na kutuacha vinywa wazi ni kuwa korona haina tiba. Wele huu ulizidi kuenea mpaka ukatangazwa kama janga la ulimwengu. Haukuenea Uchina peke yake, bali hata mataifa mengine yaliathirika. Vifo navyo vilianza kushuhudiwa, hivyo basi watu wote tukashikwa na kiwewe. Madaktari walijaribu wawezavyo, lakini juhudi zao hazikuweza kufua dafu. Hivi majuzi Wakenya tulihuzunika kwa kusikia eti korona hatimaye imewadia. Rais wetu Uhuru wa Kenyatta naye akatupasha kuwa janga limetufika. Alitupa nazo njia za kujikinga na kuwasihi Wakenya wote wazitilie maanani. Mambo mengi yalisitishwa humu nchini na pia
Salome Wairimo, a rising star in the musical world, using her talent to belt out this amazing rendition of wimbo wa historia dubbed Janga la Corona. beautiful stuff. Now, good morning, East Africa. Welcome to your world. My name is Joseph Warungu, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts, comments, questions, as well as receiving your personal videos on COVID-19. You can reach us by phone, WhatsApp, and social media platforms. Our hashtag New Normal. And here is what we have in store for you this Monday morning, the 27th day of April.
That covers your nose and mouth.
We debunk the myths about masks and teach you a number of mask tips and tricks.
There has been this misguided notion.
Yes, today we take a look at the myths and general misinformation spread around the globe regarding the coronavirus. Indonesians breaking quarantine rules are being scared straight by being locked up in haunted houses.
Dressed in personal protective equipment, he routinely disinfects people entering Uganda's coronavirus zero ground.
He volunteers his time and money to fumigate various places in Uganda as his way of helping to stop the coronavirus. Now, let's begin by looking at the COVID-19 situation in East Africa and around the world. First of all, globally, this is the picture. As at this morning, we've got 2,994,958 confirmed cases around the world, and 878,923 of these have recovered. Sadly, 206,997 people have died around the world. Coming closer home to Kenya first, this is the situation in our country. In Kenya, we've got 355 people who've been confirmed positive and 106 people who've recovered. 14 people have so far died in this country. Moving across our borders to our neighbor Uganda, and this is the situation in Uganda. 79 confirmed positive cases. 46 people have recovered. No one has so far been reported to have died from the virus. And moving further down to look at the situation in Tanzania, this is how it looks like. 299 confirmed positive cases. 48 people have so far recovered. There have been 10 people who've reported to have died from the virus. And elsewhere in East Africa, in Rwanda, this is the situation. You've got 191 positive cases, 92 people who've recovered. No one has so far been reported dead in Rwanda. And moving further across East Africa, I believe this should be Burundi, and it's 12 people who've been confirmed positive so far. 4 people have recovered, and 1 person has died. That's the situation around East Africa and across the globe. Now, as we saw in those numbers, close to 3 million people around the world have tested positive for COVID-19, and just over 200,000 people have died. Chinese media reports that the first possible case of the disease is now believed to be a 55-year-old man from Hubei province in China who started showing symptoms on the 17th of November last year. Since then, the virus has become a global pandemic, hitting more than 80 countries worldwide. So what exactly is coronavirus, and what is COVID-19? What are the myths about this pandemic, and how are scientists trying to control it? Well, Leila Mohammed has this special report.
Coronaviruses is a group of viruses which affect both humans and animals, and they largely cause respiratory illness.
One of the major differences is that this outbreak is caused by a new virus that has not affected human beings before.
In humans, the coronaviruses which are now known to affect humans are 6. 4 of them cause mild respiratory illness, what we refer to as common cold. but there are 3 which have been associated with large epidemics.
This particular one is totally new, having being suspected of jumped species from animals to man, and for that reason, no one has prior immunity to it because no one.
But by far, the large majority of persons do not get severe disease. So it's not, as some people might think, it's a death sentence.
As at March 18th, 2020, reports show that the Chinese city of Wuhan is gradually getting back to near normal life after months of a total lockdown caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Scientists say the doctors had warned of a SARS-like viral disease that they believe stemmed from something sold at the wet market. After weeks of investigation, it was discovered that it originated in a bat and somehow hopped to another animal, probably a pangolin, which then passed it to humans.
The current drive of this outbreak is not animal. It's not by animals. It's by man to man or between human beings. It's that I get infected and I infect other humans.
Scientists have dispelled rumors and myths that hotter temperatures and the skin color of an individual will play a key role in boosting his or her immunity against COVID-19. But what they are now saying is that there is a race against time to find a cure to ensure that COVID-19, that was called a pandemic just last week, can be cured.
That is because even for other viruses, though we've not studied the effect of temperature on this current COVID-19 virus, it belongs to a family of viruses, about 40 other viruses called coronaviruses. And we've seen that they can survive for hours, even in very hot temperatures on the surface.
Doctors have given it symptoms which they note can sometimes be similar to those of the common cold or flu.
The disease will present largely with a dry cough and fever, and also people will feel tiredness. And in some instances, it can be severe.
So no one is resistant to this infection. Anyone can be infected. The only difference, and this brings me to your third part of your question, as to what is the issue with people above 70, is the fact that people who are older are at a greater risk of severe illness.
And those who have underlying conditions like diabetes.
Whilst a cure and vaccine is being sought, scientists say that the best strategies for preventing transmission of this disease include overall good personal hygiene.
The worry of the health system is that although we're talking about a small proportion who get severe disease and require hospitalization, if that number is so great in a short time, then it can overwhelm the health system.
Those who may already have the infection have been advised to wear a surgical mask in public. Social distancing measures are also recommended to prevent transmission.
Okay, and time now to dig a little bit deeper into what this virus is really about, following up on that report by Leila Mohammed. And I'm joined by 2 guests. We've got Professor Julius Oyugi from the Department of Medical Microbiology, University of Nairobi. He's a virologist. We've also got here in the studio with me Claudette Alusa, who is a lab technician and treasurer of the Kenya National Union of Medical Lab Officers. And a little bit later in the program, we'll be joined by Walter Mwesije from NTV in Uganda. Professor, good morning and thank you for joining us from Kisumu.
Good morning for having me this morning, Joseph.
Yes, and I can see you quite clearly. So to begin with, just to build up onto what the experts in that report were saying, what exactly are the origins, just briefly, of this virus, the coronavirus?
Thank you, Joseph. Coronavirus, as I have heard my colleagues saying, these viruses are found both in human beings and in other animals. And indeed, coronaviruses before 1960 were not found in human beings. They were mainly circulating in animals. And then from 1960 onwards, they started jumping from other animals to human beings. And to date, we have seen that 7 of these coronaviruses have now jumped from other animals to humans, including the COVID-19 that is now causing the pandemics globally.
Okay, and broadly, there are different types of coronaviruses. Just explain that a little bit.
Yeah, if we talk about human coronaviruses, there are 7 of them. Out of these 7, people have never, if you ask people before this year whether they knew about coronaviruses, most people will tell you they didn't know about coronaviruses. And yet, from 1960, we have had 4 coronaviruses which have been circulating in human beings. They tend to cause what we call flu-like, disease symptoms, which go away without treatment. And as such, people are not paying attention to them. Until the year 2002, when the first coronavirus, what we refer to as SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, started, spreading in China and killing people. But fortunately, that coronavirus infected about 8,000 people. The world was able to control it, and it disappeared completely from human population. And then later on, another coronavirus came around 2015, and this coronavirus jumped from camels to human beings. It's called MERS-CoV, and this coronavirus was mainly found in the Arabian, in Middle East, where people keep camels. It infected quite a number of people, but the incidence reduced, and right now it is only still circulating in those regions. Then last year, the COVID-19 showed up in China, and this is the latest coronavirus, which is, as my colleague has said, it is new to human beings. This virus was initially in bats, but it has now moved from bats to human, and is now spreading within humans from one human to another.
Now,
and the fact that it's, yes.
Professor, we're going to spend a bit of time on this show today debunking some of the common myths and misinformation surrounding the new coronavirus. One of the things that has been spoken a little bit about is that there is a possibility that this outbreak may have been with us as early as in the year, because there was quite a number of people who are reporting severe cases of pneumonia or severe flu, and people felt like, a flu that doesn't go away for weeks. And there is a feeling, a rumor, that may have possibly be the coronavirus which had come here as early as the beginning of the year. Is this a myth?
I don't think that may be completely true, because the pandemic started from China. And I think it was the late December when the first cases of COVID-19 were identified in Wuhan, China. And it could not have spread that fast from Wuhan to Kenya in early January to start infecting people, so that people who are presenting with pneumonia, flu-like symptoms were due to COVID-19. Remember, Joseph, that the symptoms caused by COVID-19 are very similar to symptoms caused by flu virus, the influenza virus. And therefore, people may confuse if you have, flu-like symptoms, people may start thinking that is coronavirus. That is why currently, the only way to know whether someone is having COVID-19 is for them to be tested in the laboratory and to confirm if they are positive or not.
And Prof,
you can't base on symptoms alone.
Talking about testing, I've got with me here Claudette Alusa, who is a lab technician. From a testing point of view, how do you distinguish COVID-19 from other flus, from pneumonia even?
Thank you. The best way to distinguish that is by carrying out the COVID-19 test using the PCR machine. So normally what the PCR does, it undergoes 3 stages. When the sample has been collected, that sample will undergo the denaturization at 94 degrees Celsius for about 5 minutes. That way is a matter of denaturization is kuua, so that people can understand. By trying to kill all the other types of cells that are in there to remain with just the COVID-19 virus. After that, it undergoes annealing. At that point is whereby the DNA strand of the COVID is separated to have the RNA strand of COVID-19 at around 50 degrees Celsius for 5 seconds. From there, it's been multiplied so that you can have a longer strand whereby you can be able to analyze it. So when that machine has that COVID-19 as part of it, so when you're analyzing it, it will, when you have that positivity, that if that sample has the COVID-19 and it is the RNA strand matches with the one that you have put in the machine, that will tell you that this person has COVID-19 positive.
Okay.
That's the only way to determine that this person is has COVID, and this one does not have.
And briefly, does that, it sounds like a long process. Does that explain why the results are taking, rather long?
Actually, it's not a long process, because as I've told you, the first part is 5 minutes, 5 seconds, 60 seconds. And it's a matter of how you put the machine to run. You can run even up to, depending with the type of machine you have, you can run up to 50 samples in a matter of 20 minutes. So like how we have there's a machine in Kemri that can run up to 30,000 tests in a day. That means we have that capacity of doing as many tests as possible in a day.
I'll come back to the complications and other details, Claudette, about testing COVID-19 and the mass testing. But since the new coronavirus broke out, the internet has played host to a series of myths that black people cannot get infected, citing factors such as the high temperatures in many parts of Africa, immunity to flu, and a tough African skin. Now, the whole of myths gained traction due to the low numbers of black people with confirmed COVID-19 infections. However, Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe said Kenya's confirmed cases should serve as proof that anyone can get the virus.
There has been this misguided notion that if you have got a black skin, you cannot get coronavirus. I would like to disabuse that notion. The lady is an African like you and I.
The last one.
And by the way, she is 27 years old, just like you look like.
So, Professor, one of the earlier cases who is young, she's African, she's got a black skin like mine, so we're not blessed as we think we are. Prof, what does the science say in terms of this myths about race and temperatures?
As you say, these are myths, Joseph. Remember, when this outbreak started in Wuhan, China, there was a 20-year-old Cameroonian who was the first African to be infected with COVID-19 in China. This is the very early stages of the COVID pandemic. And then the virus spread to other parts of the world. We saw in the US, there were black Africans who got infected. But now, as you have seen, the virus is almost in all African countries. And therefore, I think skin has nothing to do with resistance to COVID-19. The second thing that I talk about is the temperature. Temperature also, we live in fairly warm weather, and you have seen that we are getting infected just like people in temperate lands. And again, that one is a myth. We cannot actually say that because we are seeing low numbers in Kenya or in other African countries, it's because of the temperatures here. No, the virus survives in ambient temperature, and as such can be spread even in warm temperatures like where we live. So those are basically myths, Joseph.
But Professor, just on that, I suppose maybe the origins of this myth about temperatures is that you normally have bouts of flu during the winter in the Western world, and there was a feeling that maybe it tends to thrive. Certainly flu is a lot more prevalent during the cold season. So you're saying that is all not quite accurate?
So viruses are different, Joseph, and each virus behaves differently. Flu virus, it is true that flu virus, the influenza virus, is mainly common during winters in temperate lands, but then during summer it disappears, and they think that is due to temperature. The coronavirus that we're dealing with is different from the flu virus. And at the moment, we don't have evidence. We rely on scientific evidence. We don't have evidence that this virus is sensitive to temperatures. And if it were, why is it circulating in warm places now? It would not be there, in warm countries. So until we do studies and confirm that on COVID-19, at this point, I would strongly think that that is still a myth, that this virus can spread even in warm temperatures.
So, Professor, COVID-19, this virus appears to be quite stubborn, and you say it's different from the others. So what is it? Has it got completely different characteristics from what we may have seen before?
Yes, it is different. Like the virus, again, as you've heard, is new to human beings. That is one. So our bodies have not learned how to deal with it very well. That is number one. And number two, the fact that it is easily transmissible from one individual to another, that even makes it a unique virus, although we know that even flu is also transmitted through the same mode of transmission. But this virus seems to be spreading so fast in almost all environmental conditions. And for that reason, I think if you compare it with other viruses like flu virus, it looks like it is a unique virus in respect to the mode of transmission and conditions under which it is being transmitted.
Professor, thank you. Stay with us because I'm going to pass on a lot of other myths to you this morning. Now, My Secretariat is a Netflix series that has caused all, because of an episode 10 of this 2018 series. Yes, I'm talking about 2018. That's 2 years ago. There is a scene in which they describe the coronavirus pandemic to the last detail of exactly what we are fighting against today. Now, this made a lot of people believe that the virus was actually manufactured.
건 좀 더 조사를 해봐야겠지만 변종된 코로나 바이러스입니다.
코로나면 혹시 메르스?
메르스, 사스, 감기 모두 동일한 바이러스의 유전 정보를 지닌 패밀리로 보면 돼요. 코로나는 호흡기 질환을 일으키는 대표적인 바이러스고 2015년 메르스 사태 때 사망률이 20%가 넘었죠.
근데 20%는 무기로 쓰일 정도는 아니지 않나요?
아까도 말했다시피 이건 변종된 바이러스예요. 누군가 인위적으로 사망률을 90%에 육박.
Okay, so Prof, we played that clip there from Netflix of almost a prediction of what is happening today, which then spurred all these rumors that it might have been manufactured or developed in a laboratory. You're a researcher yourself. Is this true? Can you actually develop this in a lab?
You can manipulate viruses in the laboratory, but developing a virus that can be used to infect human beings and start circulating in human populations takes a bit of effort and time. And therefore, at this point, regarding COVID-19, I would not go for the idea that COVID-19 was manufactured in the lab. Because when this virus was first discovered, remember we have the ability to actually do tests to kind of trace the originality of this virus. And the tests which were done to trace the originality of this virus, trace it back to bats, bats which actually harbors a number of coronaviruses. And therefore, for a virus to be able to survive in human beings, they must have certain characteristics. They must have been able to survive in probably another host, like birds or other animals, before it jumps into human beings. And therefore, the theory of manufacturing the COVID-19 in the lab, for now, I would not buy that theory. I still believe that this virus came from bats, entered into an intermediate host, and into human beings. The issue of being manufactured in the lab, I don't still buy as of now.
Prof, is there something about the behavior of COVID-19 and I suppose other viruses that we've seen before, like SARS and MERS, that makes you predict which way it's going to spread anyway? Perhaps that's the link that people might be making now?
When we look at the previous coronavirus outbreaks, this coronavirus, the two things may happen. And I'm saying this because of what has happened from the other coronaviruses. Number one, this virus may actually disappear from human population maybe towards the end of the year completely, and we'll never have any cases of COVID-19 in future. That is one possibility. And the reason why I'm saying this is a sister coronavirus, which was there between 2002 and 2003, infected human beings. We were able to control it, and it disappeared completely in human population. That is number one. Number two, I suspect that if that doesn't happen, then this virus may actually stay with the human beings, but it will become more friendlier. You know, it will not be as aggressive or more deadlier as it is. Because it is the nature of viruses to become friendly to their host so that they can survive. So those two scenarios are what I'm thinking may actually happen to this virus. Okay. Number one, it may disappear from our population altogether, or it can stay, but now, causing more milder disease than killing a lot of people as it is doing right now.
Thank you, Prof. Let me come to you, Claudette. You're a lab technician. If you are someone with very evil intentions in your life in the lab, might you be able to cook up a virus as deadly and as stubborn as COVID-19 that can be devastating to the human population?
Honestly speaking, there's a possibility that someone can create something like that. Given the fact that we have other coronaviruses that has been there before, it's a matter of just putting some little things so that it can give a different form of mutation. There's a possibility of that, yes. For you to do that, I don't know what is going through someone's mind to go to that extent. And yes, as the professor has said, you have to have a different form of host to see if this virus can survive before you infect it to human beings. And that's why we still go back to the fact that we are saying it still came back from the birds, because that is where it started to survive before it started infecting human beings.
So you're with the professor when he says it's highly unlikely? It's highly unlikely. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, Prof, a quick one for you. We've had influenza, the Spanish flu, 1918. We've had MERS, we've had SARS, we have COVID-19. Is there a possibility in years to come we could see yet another type of deadly virus?
Yes.
Yes. There will always be another pandemic due to viruses. If you look at the pandemics that have occurred in the last century, majority of them are due to viruses. This is simply because, viruses are found in, other animals. Actually, almost all forms of living. Sorry. And as the human population grows, so these viruses that are found in other animals, they are not necessarily human viruses. But if they get a chance to move from animals to humans, they actually spread very fast and kill a lot of human beings. So the problem that we have now is the human population. As the human population grows, we tend to interact with animals more in terms of, the food that we eat. And even if you look at these outbreaks of pandemics that have occurred recently, most of them seem to be originating from China. And if you look at the population in China, the population is huge. And for that reason, they now tend to eat a lot more other animals, which, necessarily will not eat. And by doing that, they're getting in contact with these animals. And there's a possibility of these viruses crossing from animals to human beings. So viruses are going to be there to cause the next pandemic. All we need to do now, at the end of COVID-19, is we need to start preparing for the next viral pandemic, which could either be influenza or another virus.
Okay, Prof, I'll come back to that a little bit later. But, the Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, in Kisumu, is boosting its capacity to test for COVID-19 in order to help curb the spread of the virus in the country.
So the beauty about the equipment is a high throughput equipment, which is able to test up to 960 samples in an 8-hour shift.
So far, here in Western Kenya, we cover Western Kenya and part of South Rift. We've tested almost 900 samples, and all of those we've released results. We've tried working really hard on our turnaround time. We try our best to make sure that our turnaround time is within 24 hours, and it is. There's a global stockout. not only for test reagents, but PPEs, personal protective equipments as well. So I know there's a lot of pressure for people for governments to initiate mass testing, and I'm sure our government is working towards that. But the challenge they may have is the availability of test reagents.
Okay, Claude, talking about testing, everywhere, experiences from Europe and Asia, countries that have been successful, they say you must test and test and test. It's one of the biggest ways to combat COVID-19. How much are we testing in Kenya, in your view?
In my view, I think our test is a little bit low, given the fact that we have the capacity of doing up to 30,000 in a day, and we are able to do just 1,000. If we get that chance to increase the number of tests per day, we are able to have more coverage of testing more people, especially in those counties that we have high number of positives. Take, for example, Nairobi is like the core of the COVID, but the number of people we are testing is very low. Right now, we cannot use the initial stage of saying, look for the contact person and all that. We've gone past that. We need to have that more of random sample testing, get the test, do the test, and that way we are able to minimize and isolate more people. But if we do low number of tests, there are other people who are working out there who are positive, and it will take more time to get them. And by the time we get them, they've already infected other people. So the spread will still continue.
Now, in that clip, they talked about lack of reagents, but do we have the capacity for mass testing?
I think at this point in time, we need to have that capacity. Given the fact that we have been told there's money set aside for such things, we need to get a way on how to purchase those items. Take, for example, a country like Uganda. Uganda has the president has given a mandate to have about 3 million tests done in a week. And that is something now the health factor sectors will come, get the reagents, get the kits, get everything that they need so that they can be able to run and do those tests. But if we are not that vigilant ourselves, we are not able to push ourselves to do those tests.
What are our targets at the moment? If President Museveni is aiming for 3 million, what about Kenya?
I think Kenya should put even up to half of our population, because we are almost 50 million. And up to now, up to 46 days, we've done less than 100,000 tests, of which is very low. That turnaround, the ratio compared to the number of people we are in Kenya is very low. We need to increase that rate of testing so that we can be able to curb and have that way of isolating those people and preventing more infections.
Prof, you're in Kisumu, where that KEMRI lab is based. What are your views as a virologist in terms of using mass testing as a way of quickly trying to contain the spread of COVID-19?
The approach of using mass testing as a way of preventing the transmission of COVID-19, I think when we talk about mass testing, we have to be very careful to understand what exactly do we mean by mass testing. Joseph, you can't go to the streets of Kisumu and just pick people and start testing them. I think the right word is to use targeted mass testing. What this means is that the government puts in measures to identify people who have been exposed, within the community. Remember, COVID-19, as it is now, there is what we are calling community transmission, where the virus is spreading from people within the community. So if the government is able to put in mechanisms within the communities to identify people who have been exposed, and those people are tested, that would be what I may call targeted mass testing, which would be very important, because as it is now, remember the most difficult thing about this virus is that if you get infected, 80% of those individuals develop what is called mild disease, and these people are potential transmitters. They will transmit this virus to other people within the community. So as soon as the people who are at risk are identified within the communities, they should be isolated and tested. And this is what I'm calling targeted mass testing. This will be very important in containing community spread of COVID-19.
And even same question to you, Prof, in terms of targeted mass testing, as you put it, do we have the capacity for that in Kenya?
We should. I'm not talking for the government, but I think we should have that. The only way to contain the spread of COVID-19, I think the government has done very well in terms of putting in measures. Like if I talk about Nairobi, for example, because in Kisumu we have not had cases of COVID-19, it could be there, we don't know. You see that for Nairobi, for example, we are seeing certain areas where there are more COVID-19 than others. And I think the government should move in with their surveillance team to, use community health workers or the Nyumba Kumi initiative to be able to pick people who are, sick, people who have been exposed to the sick, and actually test them. And that capacity should be there. If we don't have that capacity, then we are waiting for a very serious situation in future.
Okay. Prof, thank you very much indeed. Now, you've been sending us your comments. We asked you what kind of myths have you heard regarding COVID-19, and you sent us your messages on #NewNormal. Here are some of those observations and comments. Yes, what myths have you heard? That's what we asked you. And Christian Victor says there is no gold standard being used in testing the virus. The COVID-19 virus has never been purified and visualized. Accuracy of the current tests are unknown. That's a question I'll throw back to Claudette in a moment. 60 Cent Mansolo Solo, if you treat this disease normally, it will treat us abnormally. Drink water and thank me later. Thank you for that. Wow. And Olamidika, that there is no cure, but people are recovering. That's what you've heard. Okay, that is actually true. People are recovering. This is who? Nobkedo, you say that COVID-19 escaped from the lab, bioterrorism from the country of origin. We've just dismissed that with the help from our experts in the studio and in Kisumu. Wamboi Kaboi, injecting sanitizers and disinfectant to COVID-19 patients will cure them, according to President Trump. Yes, we heard that. We're all with our mouths wide open in amazement. Liz Gardner, oops, live your life. It's a precious gift from the Creator. We all have 2 days, the day one comes and the day that you go. And there is no ifs or buts. Indeed. Another comment here from Duncan Dongo, that we need 1B a day to fight it, yet they've been charging patients 2K. Did you say 1K a day? Patients 2K per day, that's people who are in isolation. Thank you for that comment. Other myths, this is from Gisore Onyangore, that the virus is from a natural source, not labs. But we know they published about it being made in a lab in 2015. I think we've gone over that and said, no, it's possibly not good science. Science does not support that. Maximax, wearing masks, but hapo, tusidanganyane. Hapo kwa Kenya, aki, sioni tukiweza hiyo kazi. Kwanza, leo nimekutana na mama mwingine amevalia kwa forehead, unaona, like eyeglasses, and she was in a hurry. That sounds rather comical in terms of a protective gear. Asante Maximax. The ball Guchai, those who had just recovered can't give birth or produce anymore. That's one I'll throw to the panel in terms of a myth. I've not come across that one before. Marceline Ingato Iduvago, that we need to use tea leaves to fight COVID-19. We'll talk about these tea leaves as a cure. Actually, while we're on that, yes, tea leaves, black tea is something that, a lot of people have been touting. Claudette, I can see you smiling a moment, and I'm throwing this at Professor in a minute. Now, there was a myth gaining traction in the coastal region of Kenya that the cure for the coronavirus is black tea without sugar. This message has been doing rounds on social media platforms, and quite a number actually believed it. Health authorities have, however, dismissed it as propaganda, warning those behind the infodemic that the law will soon catch up with them. And as NTV's Kevin Mutai reports, Kenyans have been urged to maintain proper hygiene and adhere to government's guidelines as a way of helping to stop the spread of the coronavirus.
With the country grappling with the growing number of confirmed COVID-19 positive persons, the desire to have solutions are growing to points of apparent desperation. In the coast, a narrative is gaining traction that black tea without sugar is the cure. This message was allegedly delivered by a baby who died after birth.
Alipokuwa anataka kumnyonyesha yule mtoto ameketi yeye mwenyewe mtoto. Sasa baada ya kwamba anataka kushtuka kwamba mtoto ameketi, mtoto akaanza kuongea, na aliyoyaongea ni kama yafuatavyo: ugonjwa wa corona dawa yake ni majani chai.
Yule asubuhi tumeona message kwa simu, kabidi sasa mama akapika hapo, tukabidi tukakunywa. Kila mtu alipata kikombe, hata wengine majirani wakaamshwa hapo wakakunywa, wengi sana.
This claim has been shared widely on various social media platforms, rallying people to take sugarless black tea on grounds that substances found in it can decrease the impact of the virus.
Kenya kiboko. Kenya sihami na sihami leo. Mwenyezi Mungu tuepushe jamani. Yani kiki mpaka kwenye magonjwa. Gonjwa la Wachina wanaotabiri wa Kenya. Jamani, Loliondo part 2 jamani.
Nikaamka nikachemsha chai ya majani na rangi nikakunywa, nikaamini kuwa ni dawa ya corona. Kwa hivyo nimeamini kuwa nimepona corona.
This myth has spread across Kwale, Kilifi, Mombasa and Tana River counties as health authorities warn those behind the notion of dire punishment. The authorities also urge members of the public to regularly wash their hands and observe social distancing as the only way to prevent the spread of the pandemic. Kevin Mutai, NTV, Mombasa.
Okay, Professor, let's talk about this. Can we be very clear? There is no cure for the COVID-19. You may have cure for the conditions that it causes, maybe your lungs and other organs and so on. But talk about black tea without sugar.
Joseph, I want to tell the viewers that at the moment there is no cure for COVID-19. That is a fact. If that cure will be available, the World Health Organization, the government of Kenya, will come and announce to us that we have found the cure for COVID-19. For you to find a cure, there is scientific process that you go through. For example, if I discover today that black tea is treating COVID-19, I must test this black tea in a number of people, those who are sick, and to evaluate whether this black tea is actually going to relieve them of the symptoms of COVID-19 and as well as clear the virus in them. And this must be done in form of a research or a study in quite a number of people. And this has not been done with the black tea that we are talking about. This is, at the moment, it is more of a speculation. And I would strongly urge the viewers that black tea as being rumored now as a treatment for COVID-19 should not be used as a treatment. If people think it's a treatment, let it be subjected to research. And research will tell us whether it is working or not. Therefore, for now, let us use the intervention that we have been advised by the government to prevent the transmission of this virus and not take the black tea as a cure for COVID-19.
Okay, Prof, thank you. Now, that's what ordinary Kenyans at the coast think or believe. But this is quite serious in Madagascar. Last week, we highlighted this story about the president of Madagascar, André Lajonin, who officially launched a herbal remedy and claimed to prevent and cure coronavirus. Mainstream scientists cautioned against any claim that has not been backed up by trials to prove a formula is safe and effective. The so-called cure is based on black tea. In a school in Antananarivo, Malagasy authorities distribute their new COVID-19 remedy to pupils, a herbal tea called COVID Organics. This drink, developed by the Malagasy Institute of Applied Research, is derived from Artemisia, a plant with proven efficacy against malaria. However, the effectiveness of the infusion against COVID-19 has not been the subject of any published scientific study. Professor, I want to come back to you a little bit more. Why do you think people go back to this idea of the tea? I know that there are concoctions that we take to help prevent or fight malaria, but what is the association? Is it because that sometimes we fight flus through a lot of liquids and concoctions? Where do you think this comes from?
It is one thing that the viewers should know is that the COVID-19 as it is now, we refer to it as a self-limiting disease. What it means is that for those who get infected, who will not die, they will actually, clear the virus by themselves using their immunity and get well. Now, if that happens, when you take tea, what they call black tea, and you recover, you may get the notion that black tea is treating you, right? But yet, this is a natural process with COVID-19. Not everyone who is infected with COVID-19 end up dying. And not everyone who gets infected with COVID-19 end up getting severe disease. And so, as I mentioned, that, from the scientific world where I am, anything that is used for treatment must be subjected to clinical trials. We have to test this in human beings to confirm that it is working. Remember, Joseph, during the earlier stages of the COVID-19 in China, they used a lot of things to treat patients, including herbal medicine. For those of us who read, a lot of, this scientific work, Chinese use a lot of herbal medicine to treat their people. But to date, they have not come out and say that this particular herbal medicine was able to treat or cure COVID-19. So all that we are hearing now from Madagascar, Kenya, or black tea, or artemisinin, all these things, if they are true that they could be helping in treating COVID-19, we have to subject it through research to find out, number one, whether they are effective in treating COVID-19, and number two, remember the case of Madagascar you have just mentioned, any drug that is going to be used in human being must be tested for safety. It must be known that it is safe in human beings before it can be used for treatment. So let's treat all these issues now as myths for now until they are subjected to clinical trials to prove their ability to treat COVID-19.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I have a few more myths up my sleeve, but first a quick comment from you, Claudette.
Yes.
This business of black tea, Prof says it has to be, there is a scientific process. Have you come across the tea?
One, there's nothing related to black tea with the cure of the virus. First thing we need to understand, this virus is something that is not even in your stomach or your gut or anything. It mainly affects your lungs, because when you inhale it, it goes to your lungs, and where it attaches itself to the alveoli, where that's where it gets that chance to multiply and break down, and that's why you come up and having that shortness of breath, those fevers. It's basically in your lungs. So when you tell me you're taking tea to cure and your tea is not even going anywhere near your lungs, it does not relate. Basically what we're trying to say, the constant taking of fluids and and all these other things are helping to boost your immunity, not to cure the virus. When you have a strong immune in your body, it is easier for you to fight against the virus. So you need to be strong. That's why we're saying people who have other ailment, hepatitis, diabetes, are likely to have severe consequences when they're infected with COVID, because their immune is slightly low compared to a normal healthy person. You can find a healthy person who can go even be a carrier for the whole time during the whole incubation period without any symptoms, and after those 14 days it's over and done with, because the virus itself ends up dying in your body because of many things, the temperature, the humidity. When it lacks that place to attach itself, it will end up dying and leaves your body like that. And that's why we are insisting on that incubation time and quarantine.
Okay. Claudette, have some water there to clear your throat. It has no cure at all, but I can tell you it's clear. Now, there's a question here, Prof, from a viewer, if you can address it. This is Moses Kirui, and he's asking, how did the virus travel from Wuhan, China to the USA without reaching Shanghai or Beijing or indeed other big cities in China? Why that jump, Prof?
It is not true that the virus did not spread to other parts of China. There are cases of COVID-19 in other parts of China, not just Wuhan. The only difference between Wuhan and other places in China is that there were very few cases in those other cities in China, and the Chinese were able to contain, that lockdown thing in Wuhan was able to contain those who are infected within Wuhan and therefore they were not able to spread it to other parts of China. However, because of the air travel, which you know is happening globally, those who could have been exposed in Wuhan, in China, could have traveled to other countries like Spain, USA, and then they started spreading this virus to these other countries. So it is not true that the virus was only confined in Wuhan alone. There are cases of COVID-19 in other cities in China, but they were very few and they were kind of contained.
But Prof, it's fair to say that it's people, human beings, who are the main transmitters in terms of carrying it from one place to the other.
You are right. The virus was mainly transported by human beings. So the story is, once this virus jumped from, say, birds to an intermediate host to human beings, the spread now started between human beings, from one human being to another. And that is what has now sustained this virus, globally. So what is happening now is not the transmission of the virus from other animals to humans. It is the transmission of the virus from one human being to another human being. So that is what is happening now, and that is what is maintaining this virus in our communities.
Okay, there was an earlier comment here that we had a question which I'd like again to throw to our panelists. This one came from Kot Debol Guchai. Those who are just recovered can't give birth or produce anymore. Let me start with you, Claudette. What do you make of that claim?
That is 100% untrue. As I've said, the virus mainly affects our lungs. It does not go down to your uterus to affect your uterus or anything or something like that. So definitely you will be able to reproduce.
Okay. Prof, any thoughts in terms of what other damage that the virus does to people even after you've recovered? Are there other long-term conditions that one might experience?
So, as I mentioned earlier, if you get infected with the COVID-19, we now know that about 80%, 8 out of 10 people who get infected with COVID-19, they develop what is called mild flu-like symptoms, disease. Then they recover and they're just normal, nothing major. A small percentage, like less than 20% of those who get infected with COVID may develop severe disease where they get pneumonia. And further, a small percentage of that may progress to critical condition where the virus now, start damaging the lungs. And this is where the problem is. So, if you get COVID and you get pneumonia and you recover, you may not have any, long-term health impact out of COVID-19. Those who may have some sort of, aftermath health outcome are those who end up with, critical or those who end up with damage of the lungs. Remember, this virus causes what we call cytokine storm, basically rendering your lungs not to function properly. And if this goes for a while, it kind of causes damage to the lungs. And therefore, for some times, these individuals may have issues with the lungs over time. Other than that, there are no other, non-medical conditions that we know of that these individuals who recover may suffer from once they recover from COVID-19.
Okay, Prof, thank you. We'll have more from you in a moment. But if you ever wondered how the stay-at-home and lockdown measures help fight the COVID-19 pandemic, well, here is a simple animation to help you understand. Yes, we want to keep that guy completely at bay. And after the break, we'll be joined from Kampala by Walter Musije as we tackle more myths and find out, a lot more on what's going on in Uganda and their own strategy for fighting COVID-19. For now, let's take a short break.
This is NTV.
Rib-cracking comedy. Just move to NTV.
Akili, 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 akili. Let's chase the germs away. Let's chase the germs away by keeping our hands clean. And when you want to sneeze or when you want to cough, do it in your elbow. Let's practice sneezing into your elbow. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Achoo! Again. Achoo! Yay! You did it! Germs, germs, germs. They make us sick. Germs, germs, germs are not our friends. Germs, germs, germs. They make us sick. Germs, germs, germs. Germs, germs, germs are not your friends.
Social distance, flexible work schedules, personal hygiene, cleaning and disinfecting work surfaces, and staying home. These are measures that in the era of COVID-19 can help to save lives and stop the spread of infectious diseases. Join the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health Services as they tackle how health and safety at the workplace can help stop the corona pandemic. Tuesday, 28th April, 7:45 p.m. on NTV.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
Now, Walter from Kampala, Uganda, good morning and welcome to Your World.
Good morning, Joseph.
Yeah, please. What's the latest? What's the update in Uganda regarding the numbers and what the authorities are doing or encouraging people to do?
Yeah, well, Joseph, I would like to let you know that here in Uganda currently we have 79 cases of COVID-19. But of course, we registered 4 new cases as of yesterday. And most of these new cases, apart from one who was a refugee from Burundi, 23 of them are truck drivers. So initially, the figure from 55 cases that Uganda dealt with previously up to 79 now, all that is a number accumulating from truck drivers from both Kenya and Tanzania. And of course, not to say that these are only nationals of Kenya and Tanzania. We have 2 Ugandans who have tested positive after returning from Tanzania and Kenya on the other hand. And of course, we have 46 recoveries. We don't have any deaths. And that's how the numbers stand. But as of today, we are counting day 13 of the extended 21-day lockdown, which of course the president said the ministry required to continue combing and actually cut out any traces of would-be community infections, which currently we haven't reported any.
Now, how widespread is the testing, or how well are they testing in Uganda?
Well, Joseph, the cases are, most of the cases that we've had in Uganda are people who have had a history of travel from many countries, Dubai and all the other countries around the world. And they are contacts for now. The people they got in touch with. We don't have, many cases where, the government has to really think about where did this person contract the disease from. The only case that almost, gave them quite a bit of time to think about how it happened was a baby who was infected from one of the districts here in eastern Uganda. And, the baby has since recovered and they were discharged also with their parents after, testing negative, twice.
Now, you say that the president recently extended your lockdown. Just remind us the nature of your lockdown. What are your hours? What does it involve? What can you or can't you do when you're under lockdown?
All right, so the lockdown here quite affects almost everything because the hours of actual movement, 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. So beyond that time, then you're not allowed to move around unless you have, special permission to do so, because the government then supplied stickers which motor vehicle, drivers can use to move beyond the curfew time. Now, these were selected people. They termed them as essential workers, and of course the media is included. That's why sometimes we're able to move around in the night. But then, of course, businesses are still also on lockdown because all the bars, all the shops around town that don't sell food stuff are closed. The only places that are left open so far are markets and the small shops around that sell foodstuffs, and of course the agricultural commodities. For example, the pesticides and agricultural equipment.
And just briefly, Walter, I noticed that in Uganda it's still not mandatory to wear masks, whereas in Tanzania, in Kenya, that's one of the measures that they're really enforcing. Is that still the case, that it's not mandatory to wear a mask?
Yeah, well, the ministry did emphasize that there isn't a need for now for the population to be wearing masks at this stage, because they think that the lockdown really is going to help them cut or flatten the curve in terms of transmission, which of course they've registered some results apart from these new cases that are only being imported from other countries. And the masks for now are only being given to health workers, and they also advise them to wear them if they are directly dealing with somebody who, has COVID-19.
Okay, now Ugandan authorities have taken a tough approach to COVID-19 and strongly warned against the rumors and myths being spread about the coronavirus around the country.
Yeah, they did have, because
on social media, please always endeavor to cross-check. And as government, we are not going to sit. We are going to follow up those posts. If those people are in the country, they will be held accountable for their posts. They will have to explain why they decide to misinterpret and also to misinform the public when we have official channels of relaying information to members of the public. Media houses that continue to promote any message that undermines government's effort against COVID-19 risk having their licenses suspended.
Okay, Walter, so the Ugandan government taking, tough measures to fight any misinformation. Have there been a lot of myths spreading around, rumors?
Well, I can tell you that most of the rumors and myths and, false information that has been moving around here in Uganda has been via social media. And the president, of course, came out earlier in one of his speeches to warn media houses that would seem to be promoting any information that is not verified from the Ministry of Health as regards the fight towards COVID-19. So there isn't any media house for now that has been, implicated for spreading such information. But of course, social media is quite unregulated here and there. So, a bit of myth has been moving around, especially to do with the fact that, COVID-19 did not originate from what they are telling us, that, it was from animals to humans in China. There is that allegation that, it's about a system to do with 5G network, which the government came out to, dispel and clarify that there is no truth about that. But of course, earlier on, we also, had people talking about COVID-19 does not affect the black race as much as it does to, the white race. And of course, this also was dispelled when our own Ugandans here and people in Africa started suffering from the disease. Now, the most serious thing that the president did emphasize was the use of herbal medicine, because people around, the country had started spreading out, selling herbal medicine, apparently that it treats COVID-19, and of course some people were arrested. One family was arrested in eastern Uganda, where a father and a daughter had mixed their small concoction and they were selling it around the village there in Iganga district at about 5,000 shillings. That's about less than $4 about there. And these were telling their neighbors that they have the cure for COVID. And of course, we have another biochemist who is currently, being investigated after he came out on YouTube to say that he's mixed some concoctions in his laboratory and finally came up with a cure for COVID-19. But of course, he was not, he was taken to police and recorded statements and asked to, apologize to the country, but then also requested to, follow the correct guidelines of making drugs in the country.
Now, Walter, in a lot of places, people are following these myths and tending to believe them because of fear. What would you say about the atmosphere in Uganda? Was there a demand for those type of concoctions?
Well, at the beginning, of course, when we registered our first case in March, that's the 22nd, about there, there was scanty information about COVID-19. And of course, the government was still coming up with, measures on how to disseminate information that is accurate about the disease. So people used that advantage during that time when, there was nobody telling us about what to expect and how it can be treated. And of course, the fact that, the authorities kept on telling us, this disease has no cure. It has no cure. It's only supportive treatment. But of course, the videos that came from elsewhere in the world on social media then led to people coming up with concoctions. There were many videos circulating, all over social media, and I'm sure you must have seen some of them in your country there, where people were telling us to, mix this and then boil onions and then do what, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, Professor, let me come to you briefly to address the issue of masks. You've got 3 East African countries, 2 who are enforcing the wear your mask in public policy. Uganda, which is a little bit more liberal, but is very tough on the lockdown. In terms of how this virus spreads, can you talk about this, the mask as a protective piece of equipment?
Thank you very much, Joseph. If you remember, when the first cases of COVID-19 were reported in Kenya, the government did not come out immediately and instructed people to start using masks. For the simple reason that those early cases were imported cases. There are people who had been infected from other countries, and then they brought the COVID-19 to this country. And then later on, when we started seeing what we are calling community transmission, where now the transmission is not from those from other countries, but is from people living with us, that is when the government now said that from that time, everyone must wear a mask. And the reason being that, because the transmission is within the community, you don't know who's going to infect you with COVID-19 if you go to a gathering. And as such, the only way you can protect yourself if you're not infected is to wear a mask wherever you go to public gatherings. If you are infected as well, if you are going to go out and you don't know that you're infected, it is also good to wear a mask. So the issue of wearing masks in public places is mainly to prevent the transmission of community transmitted COVID-19. In Uganda, as I've heard our colleague talks about the fact that the cases that they have had so far, almost all of them are imported. I think there is less risk of community transmission, and therefore that is the reason why they may be still not advising everybody to wear masks.
Okay, Prof, thank you. Any thoughts, Claudette, on the masks?
I am in agreement with Prof. At the level that we are compared to Uganda, we are at that stage whereby the spread of COVID-19 is within the community, whereby anyone can be able to spread to any other person. We are not in that stage whereby we are saying we are using the criteria of have you traveled and all that. We are in that different stage whereby I can be positive and I can infect the person next to me. That's why we are at that stage where we need to put on masks anywhere we go to. And I think that is where Kenyans do not understand the essential or the necessity of putting on those masks. It's not just for pleasure, whereby I've heard someone saying, someone has put the mask over your head. The reasons as to why we are putting this mask is for protection against and towards. I can walk and I can spread without knowing, and by me putting on that mask, I am able to protect myself and the person who is next to me. Because I like, let's say, for example, coming here, I've come into contact with many people. If I decide to walk without a mask, I might end up infecting more than 100 people without knowing. But if I put on a mask, I am preventing that spread of that same infection to many people.
Okay.
That's why in Kenya TZ, we need to put on the masks.
Thank you, Claudette. Now, staying on masks, a number of other myths and general misinformation are centered around masks. The Kenyan government has enforced a directive on the wearing of masks in public. NTV's Olive Barrows unmasked the mask.
We've been told over and over that the best way to protect yourself from the novel coronavirus is to keep a distance of 2 meters or 2 arms lengths between yourself and others. But new research coming out of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and that is MIT, shows that the virus can travel up to 8 meters in a sneeze, 6 meters in a cough, and an act as innocuous as exhalation can spread the virus. In other words, breathe wrong and you spread the virus. This is on top of what we already know, which is that the virus can stay suspended in the air for 3 hours. Given that short of death, we cannot stop breathing, the World Health Organization is reevaluating its position on masks, and the Kenyan government has not been left behind.
If you are getting into a matatu, you are advised to wear a mask. If you are going to ride a tuk-tuk, you are advised to wear a mask. Beginning today, we have begun local production of the face masks.
Now, previously, both of these parties only recommended masks for the infected, caregivers and medical professionals, as if handled wrong, masks can in fact increase your chances of infection.
Most of masks are handled badly. If you have a mask on the whole day, keep touching it, putting it in and out, at the end of the day, it gets contaminated, then you touch it, then you touch your eyes. You are really just accumulating infection on the mask and not preventing the mask.
But given this new information that the virus travels much farther than initially thought and can remain viable on surfaces for days, we've been forced to change tact and quickly. The Health Cabinet Secretary, Mutahi Kagwe, dismissed cloth masks.
You know, not all face masks that are being made are worth anything. You know, I suppose it's better than nothing. It prevents dust. You know, it prevents dust from breathing dust.
But he was singing a totally different tune today.
The conflicting issues regarding the masks is that there are those who put themselves in more danger by using masks. But we have come to the conclusion as a Ministry of Health that nonetheless, it is imperative, it is easier, it is a measure that is better done than not done.
Another reason why WHO and governments were hesitant about promoting the use of cloth masks is because they were thought to provide little, if any, protection from particle penetration. But if done properly, the Indian government says it's only 30% less effective than the surgical mask. And if nothing else, the MIT study shows that a mask can deflect the virus, denying it easy access to your mucous membranes. That's your eyes, your nose, and your mouth. So what does it mean? It means washing your hands or sanitizing them properly before you put your mask on. You must ensure that it covers your nose and mouth properly, and that there are no gaps even on the sides of your face. Now, do not turn your mask inside out to reuse it, which means do not be cheap. And also, do not touch your face even with the mask on. And that includes, let me just put it on properly again. And that includes this, to either eat or smoke, then putting it on again, because you're simply transferring the virus onto your hands. It also means you should not reuse a disposable mask. And the minute your mask gets damp, you must take it off, as its effectiveness is greatly reduced. And to take it off, do not touch the face of the mask, but use the strings. Given the shortage of personal protective equipment, even as COVID-19 cases rise, you are being encouraged to fashion several homemade masks to switch with every use. 2 layers of 100% cotton are your best bet, and you can use an old vest or t-shirt. And again, you must make sure that it covers your mouth, nose, and sides of your face properly. You should store your spare mask in a plastic bag washed with soap and water and hang out to dry. To disinfect your cotton mask, you should wash it with soap and water and hang it out to dry in the sun for at least 5 hours, or in the alternative, boil it in salted water for 15 minutes. In a pinch, you can improvise using something as domestic as a handkerchief. That's right, and 2 rubber bands. Let's see how it's done. So you take your handkerchief and then bring the lower part to about halfway the total length of your handkerchief, and make sure the 2 halves overlap, then fold it again. And I'm hoping this width will be able to adequately cover my nose and my mouth. Then you take your rubber band, put it on one end, so it looks a little bit like a sweet. Put the other rubber band on the other end, and then fold one end over the other, then the other end. And there you go, you have your mask. But the best advice remains to restrict your movement so that you don't come to within even 8 meters of an infected person. The second best advice is to wear a mask.
Okay, Prof, I'd like to get a quick comment from you just before we move on to more myths from Tanzania. The social distancing, which Olive was demonstrating there, we've had a lot of questions, especially for people who go out, for example, jogging. How far and how fast does the virus travel in the air in terms of maybe someone's spittle or droplets? You know, they said a meter is no longer enough, you need a little bit more. Can you just very briefly tell us about that?
So the issue of the social distancing of 1 meter or 2 meters came about as a result of people who had done studies to show that if one sneezes or coughs, then the virus can actually travel up to close to a meter from where the person who is sneezing is. And therefore, for you, if you are standing or walking next to someone who is infected, if you keep a distance of more than a meter from the person who is infected, if that person coughs or sneezes, there are very limited chances that the droplets that are carrying the virus will reach you as somebody who is standing or walking next to the person who is infected. So that was the idea of the social distancing, that, stay away from the area where the virus could be hanging out in the air from a sneeze or a cough of somebody who is infected.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Now, Walter, just still on masks. So not mandatory to wear them, but what is the general attitude of Ugandans towards masks? Are people voluntarily wearing them?
Yeah, in the first stages, around, when we had just announced, when we had just received the news of the first case of COVID-19 here in the country, and, as time went on and the cases kept on growing, people were, agitated to wear masks and even gloves. But of course, after some time, the Ministry of Health came out to actually, issue guidelines on how to use masks. And they were trying to, create a situation of calmness amongst the population, because they realized that there was actually fear amongst the public. And of course, there was a rush to, buy anything they would hear about COVID-19. Vitamin C, people went to pharmacies and, stocked piles and piles in their homes. They bought gloves, surgical gloves, they bought all the face masks. And the ministry was worried that if the public then, keeps on buying all this stuff in such huge amounts because of fear, then the medical workers who actually need these things will run out of supplies. But of course, it was also to create some sort of comfort that, the disease can be prevented before you even want to wear a mask or, want to wear gloves. But of course, they had also noticed some misuse of these two things, the gloves and the masks. Just like I had the professor mention, that people put either the mask on their forehead or under their chin. And then this is the thing they are going to touch. And they were saying, if you touch it, then you're, causing or attracting infection, back to your mouth or to your nose. So the ministry decided then to guide that use a mask if you're dealing with a patient or if you know that you're in an area of high risk where you could contract COVID-19. But apart from that, the preventive measures, really, wash your hands, keep a distance, and reporting all cases. That has, pretty much worked here in Uganda.
Okay. Walter, thank you. Stay with us. You don't want to hear stories from Kenya where people have been wearing bits of underwear in their faces to try and stay safe. To add on to the regional look, here are some myths that came out of Tanzania.
Jina langu naitwa Wilson Inkia, ni production designer. Vitu ambavyo nimesikia kuhusu corona ambavyo Jina langu naitwa Wilson Inkia, ni production designer. Vitu ambavyo nimesikia kuhusu corona ambavyo sio kweli ni kwamba corona haipati vijana wenye umri mdogo, na pili corona ukinywa pombe inatibu corona. Vitu hivi nimeamini sio kweli kwa sababu ukweli nimepata baada ya kutembelea tovuti ya WHO ambao kuna watu waliuliza maswali kama hayo na wakajibu kwamba si kweli. Haijalishi umri unaweza kupata corona na sio kweli pombe inatibu corona ukinywa.
Moja kati ya taarifa potofu nilizopata kuhusu corona ni kwamba watu wanasema kwamba corona ni mafua ya kawaida, lakini kumbe sio mafua ya kawaida. Kweli nimepata kupitia matangazo ambayo yanatolewa na Wizara ya Afya. Kwa hiyo wamekuwa wakituelezea kuhusu coronavirus. Hapo ndo nilijua kweli.
Name is Sunday Ndunguru Kapesi. The myth that I heard concerning corona, and I believed it, was that it's not rampant, or it's not in Africa, because it is very hot and very humid. I started to change that belief when I realized social distancing, hygiene, masking, not gathering with a lot of people, and these are the things that will slow down the virus, because we have numbers already in Africa of people dying, and with rampant testing we find out that even more people have it. So I don't think humidity and high temperatures is a reason for the virus not to spread.
Okay, Professor, let's talk about alcohol. Alcohol is found in sanitizers, soap. Drink lots of it, you're safe. That's what some people think. Professor, over to you.
You can't use alcohol to treat COVID-19. The alcohol which is found in sanitizers is called methanol. It is a different kind of alcohol, and it is used in a very different concentration. But that is outside the body. No, that is not within the body. And therefore, if you are telling people that because the alcohol in sanitizers is killing COVID-19, then people should take alcohol through their mouth, that is totally a different thing altogether. I want to inform the viewers that there are things that, like soap, for example, we are being told that you can wash your hands with soap, and if the virus is on your hands, the soap will be able to kill the virus. That may not be true of swallowing soap. You can't swallow soap and say that when you swallow soap, it's going to treat the person who is infected with COVID-19. And therefore, what I'm trying to say is that as at now, alcohol does not treat COVID-19. These are the things that are used in killing the virus outside the body cannot be used as a treatment for those who are infected with COVID-19. So people should avoid taking alcohol. Alcohol is actually not very good for your health, and we should not be encouraging people to take alcohol because the notion that it could treat COVID-19.
Professor, would this also apply to some of the stuff that has been spoken about by President Trump? Other unscientific and orthodox ways of combating the virus?
So, Joseph, as for now, anything that would be used to treat COVID-19, number one, we'll hear it from the government. The government is, as they give their daily updates on COVID-19, they will actually report that from today onwards, this product can be used to treat COVID-19. Now, any other source, from social media, from any other person else, we should not trust that source for now. Because the government is working with experts, people who are real experts in COVID-19, and they know what works and what does not work for COVID-19. So if you hear, those are the things that are being, said by, other people about treating COVID-19. So far, there is no treatment for COVID-19 as we speak now. So let us adhere to, the preventative measures that we have been told to follow. But there is no treatment for COVID-19.
I hear you, Professor, but when you have a whole governor distributing packages to his constituents, including small bits of bottles of alcohol, saying it's a throat sanitizer. This is worrying.
Giving some small bottles of Hennessy in the food pack, the package which we give to our people. I think from the research which has been conducted by the World Health Organization and various health organizations, it has been revealed that alcohol plays a very major role in killing the coronavirus or any sort of virus.
Claudette, you're shaking your head. What do you think of this?
I think there's a different understanding when we say alcohol. When we mention the term alcohol, we are not saying the alcohol that someone is consuming. We are saying the type of alcohol one can use to disinfect the surfaces, whereby we say when the virus lands on those surfaces, they need to be well put so that well sanitized.
Those small bottles that we saw of, I think it was whiskey or whatever, they will not disinfect the throat.
They will not disinfect the throat unless you're just taking it for pleasure, but it won't help.
Explain the thinking behind that in terms of the science behind that.
When the virus is inside your body, it is in a total different form, or by the terms when it attaches itself, because for it to survive inside your body, it needs to attach itself onto something. So that attachment between the virus and the alveoli is the ACE attachment and the S spikes of the COVID-19 virus. That attachment makes it become a different type of virus by mutation and multiplication. So when it's on the surface, it's easy to kill because you can be able to kill the envelope structure of your virus. That's why we are using the alcohol and the water and soap to disinfect the surfaces. But when it's inside your body, it is in a different form, whereby that alcohol that you're consuming is not the same that is supposed to be used to disinfect when it's on the surface.
Okay.
Yes.
Claudia, thank you. So just a really good excuse to get yourself soaked in alcohol in the name of tackling COVID-19. But you've sent us some questions, and let's look at what you're saying on a hashtag new normal. This one is from Wigale Bweyenda. The drinking changa and eating pork keeps the virus away. Wow. This one is from Mark Musumba. What are the chances the COVID-19 infection curve will flatten? We'll come on to that in a minute. And there's another one here from Ainea, who says, ask Professor if this virus is a living organism, because the myth I heard is that the virus is a dead thing. That is where scientists have gotten the cure. Prof, let me come to you on that one, if you may. What is this virus? Is it a living organism? Is it dead?
That's a very good question, Joseph. Viruses are partly living and partly not living, depending on where they are. When a virus gets into your body, they get into the cells of your body, right? And inside the cells of your body, they are able to multiply, reproduce in large numbers. And then, they leave the body, the cells, and infect other cells. Now, if that virus gets outside your body, like now the COVID-19, through sneezing or coughing, and it lands onto a surface, the virus will be living for some times, and then it dies, right? So that is what happens. When it dies, the virus is not now able to infect the next person. So you can find a live virus on the surface, but you can also find a dead virus on the surface. I hope that explains what the viewer is asking.
Very clear indeed, Professor. Now, with the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, people in Kinshasa are turning to medicinal plants, particularly Congo Bololo or Vernonia amygdalina in the capital central market of Gambela. Several locals head to stalls of traditional pharmacies to buy plants and roots. Okay, so a very busy market there, Claudette. People are still, on the hunt for something that will help protect them. These traditional cures.
Yeah. I think at this point, people are trying to look for ways and things to put on themselves so that they can believe that they can get something to help them or cure them. But at the end of the day, what they're doing is, actually, it's a good thing because they're trying to boost their immunity. And when you have that high immune system, you are able to fight the virus. So that is what they're trying to relate to. When you find someone using herbs and they say, after some time I'm getting better, they try to relate to the herbs. But in real sense, it's your immune response to the virus that has helped you get over the virus infection.
And Professor, to you again on that little clip from DRC, as human beings, we tend to cling to the familiar, and the traditional herbs are very familiar to us. We use them for other ailments. So there's still that natural tendency to gravitate towards these medicinal plants.
That is true, Joseph. As we have told the viewers, in the absence of treatment of COVID-19 or a vaccine, people now start getting scared. If I become sick, what else can treat me? And this is in African society, we tend to go to herbalists for treatment. And in our communities, there are so many herbalists who claim to treat almost everything. If you go to a herbalist today and you have a particular disease, they'll tell you this herb will treat that particular disease. Well, I think the viewers should understand that any treatment for any disease, whether it is a herbal medicine or not, it has to be subjected to scientific process of confirming that that particular plant can treat COVID-19. For now, as we told the viewers, there is no treatment. So those herbal medicine that people are going for is more to satisfy their psychological, thinking that if they take the herbs, then they will get better. But in actual sense, there is no evidence that those herbs are treating COVID-19.
Okay, Professor, thank you. Walter, over to you in Kampala, talking about traditional herbs. Is it business booming for traditional healers?
Well, here, there's always a big problem, especially for patients who are ailing with cancer. The Cancer Institute has always complained about these herbalists, who come and lure the patients away from the Cancer Institute with, hope of giving them herbal medicines that are going to cure everything. Now, what becomes a challenge is that as these people, and of course they are outlawed to, sell any kind of herbal medicines that are not approved by the National Drug Authority here. So they will not come directly straight, to the Cancer Institute, but they will walk in as, anybody who can, any member of the public who has come to see a patient, for example, and then they will talk to them and they will take them away. So similar thing, only that people fear COVID-19 here. They actually fear the disease. So if you're found to have anything like signs and symptoms of COVID-19, nobody will want to get close to you. But what is true is that, as a preventive measure, then people were selling out some of these herbal medicines, which is not approved. And the scientists here, came out to clarify on the use of herbal medicines, which they claim is not a bad thing. But of course, their claim is they do not know the active content in the herbal medicines. So you could actually be taking overdose of something that is not even going to cure your illness. Or you could actually be taking overdose of what your body actually needs. And it could result into many other complications or even death. So herbal medicines, there are some accredited people who do that, but many people who are not accredited actually sell their stuff within the outskirts of the city illegally.
Walter Musije, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. We hope you can come back again to the show later on in the week. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Have a good morning. We take a short break.
Kenya's economy has been resilient, growing at an average of 5.7% over the last 5 years. Before the outbreak of COVID-19, its macroeconomic fundamentals were also quite solid. Low inflation, sufficient foreign exchange reserves, and a commitment to contain growth of debt. Like in every other part of the world, COVID-19 presents an unusual litmus test for this resilience.
We have identified needy households in Nairobi that will be the inaugural recipients of the weekly COVID-19 support stipend.
From a raft of cash transfers to vulnerable households, efforts of easing consumers' access to credit, state and non-state actors are already pulling levers to steady the economy to cushion Kenyans and businesses from the adverse effects of COVID-19. World Bank's Kenya Economic Update Edition 21 explores the impact of COVID-19 on Kenya's economic growth and outlines policy options, including caring for those infected and containing the spread of the virus, and measures to protect the most vulnerable households to cope with the crisis. World Bank Kenya Economic Update, exclusively on NTV.
The blind man told police officers, afade mimi sijawahi ona bangi maisha yangu yote.
Hizo ma award zikafanya watu waanze kuimbia award badala waimbe the word.
Mimi mkinichagua mtaona miujiza.
Anajifanya siku hizi.
Kibia mara moja.
Naogopa Mwenyezi Mungu na uji moto peke yake.
Hiyo si bangi.
Now, moving away from the myths for a moment, with COVID-19 infections at their highest peak in most countries, scientists and doctors across the globe are united in the search for a vaccine, or even better, a cure. The first human trial of a vaccine to protect against the pandemic has started in the USA.
The World Health Organization notes that the most effective measures to control the further spread of COVID-19 is testing, isolation, and contact tracing.
We cannot stop this pandemic if we don't know who is infected.
Even as governments race to curb the spread, all eyes have now turned to the prospect of a vaccine. Early Chinese efforts sequenced the genetic materials of SARS-CoV-2. China shared the sequence in early January, allowing research groups around the world to grow the live virus and study how it invades human cells and makes people sick.
We're in preclinical and we're entering phase 1 for some of the vaccine candidates.
Is that actually what it looks like?
There are so far 293 clinical trials on various existing drugs' ability to fight off the novel coronavirus. according to the latest data on Chinese clinical trial registry.
And we plan to monitor the mutation, the genomic chain of the virus.
The Chinese government is advancing several COVID-19 vaccines of different types and has announced plans to have products in human tests or emergency use in healthy people by April. Some experts have voiced concern over the sheer number of trials and how that might actually impede the research process. Their biggest worry is that this could mean a vaccine is administered before its efficacy and safety has been fully evaluated. In the US, the open-label trial has enrolled 45 healthy adult volunteers aged between 18 to 55 years over approximately 6 weeks. Already, 4 patients received the jab at the Kaiser Permanente Research Facility in Seattle, Washington, though the vaccine cannot cause COVID-19 but contains a harmless genetic code copied from the virus that causes the disease. Scientists explain that the new coronavirus is studded with a protein aptly named spike that lets the virus burrow into human cells, block that protein, and people won't get infected. That makes spike the target of most vaccine research. In Australia, scientists say they have identified how the body's immune system fights the COVID-19 virus. People are recovering from the new virus just like they would from the common flu. Determining which immune cells are appearing should also help with vaccine development, experts say.
Okay, now, Prof, let me come back to you on this issue of vaccines. From the experience of maybe previous, terrible virus outbreaks, how soon, how quickly before a vaccine can be developed and is available to the wider population?
Thank you, Joseph. So from the time a vaccine is discovered until the time it is licensed for use in human beings, it takes years. And scientists have estimated that the minimum number of months that a vaccine can be, approved for use in human beings is about 12 months or between 12 months to 18 months. So if we are talking about COVID-19 vaccine, from the time people started developing vaccine for this virus, we are likely to see a vaccine for this virus maybe early next year.
Professor, given the urgency and the emergency of this situation, does the science allow us to take a shortcut to fast-track this process?
There are things which are being done now, and I've heard from my colleagues who have developed vaccines, say the Oxford vaccine, Professor Sarah, who was talking about the fact that their vaccine may be ready by end of this year, and that is possible. So what normally happens before a vaccine is approved for use in human beings is go through clinical trials. And what basically happens, this is done in stages. We have clinical trial phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. During these clinical trial stages, the scientists are looking for, number one, is this product safe in human beings? That is very important. And the number two, is the product producing the desired effect? If it is a vaccine, is it training your body to protect you against the disease for which the vaccine is being made? And therefore, so when you start with phase 1, you use a small number of individuals, like about 50 individuals. And if it is safe and providing the desired effect, you move to phase 2, where you increase the numbers of people who are being tested to about 200. And then phase 3, you now go into thousands of numbers. So the only stage where we can shorten these clinical trials is in stage 3, where these studies can be done in multiple sites. They can do, like the Oxford vaccine, they can do those studies in UK, US, Australia, and other countries, so that the vaccine is tested in large numbers of human beings, and they can get the numbers, the desired results within a short time. So that's the only way we can shorten the process.
Okay, and Professor, briefly, So given the vaccine is at the minimum quite a few months away once they develop one, what kind of scenario are we looking at? I mean, the most recent pandemic of this scale is the influenza, the 1918 influenza. 50 million people globally died. 500 million people tested positive. How bad could it get for COVID-19 as we wait for a vaccine?
The good news about COVID-19, if you remember, as soon as this virus was declared a new virus in human beings early this year, the scientists in China immediately sequenced the virus. They were able to tease out the genetic sequence of COVID-19. And what that did was to give scientists an opportunity to use that information to develop vaccines. So immediately, that information was outside there. Scientists actually started developing the vaccines immediately. And for that reason, the race for developing vaccines is moving at a very high speed. And we may actually end up seeing a vaccine sooner than the pandemic of influenza of 1918, when we did not have the technology to sequence the genomic material of the influenza virus then. So the scenarios are different. We may see results sooner with COVID-19 compared to what would have happened with the influenza pandemic of 1918.
Professor, thank you. Now, we're leaving your world for a moment to take a look at the other world. Panama's metro system has installed thermal cameras at several stations to detect possible cases of COVID-19. This is at a time when the country has the highest number of detected novel coronavirus cases in Central America. Now, fed up with people breaking quarantine rules, one Indonesian municipality has decided to scare them straight by locking them up in a haunted house. The strategy targets those returning to the area to avoid lockdowns in major cities, but fail to self-isolate for 14 days. Local communities have been instructed to repurpose abandoned houses feared to be haunted, tapping into widespread beliefs in the supernatural, which play a key role in Indonesian folklore. Now, Rashid Amba, a man who cares for several types of animals, creates his very own zoo at the homes of confined children. He entertains them with cats, birds and snakes in the Gaza Strip during the current lockdown, which is aimed at stemming the spread of the new coronavirus.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعوذ بالله من رفيق حط على إيدك يلا حط
طيب مين حاب ينشكم؟ أنا طيب نرجع زي ما كنا.
Okay, now look at some of your feedback and your thoughts and messages. Let's see what you've been saying to us on #NewNormal. This is Luis Gekenyi. Professor, after release of the recovered patients, is there a follow-up on how they're progressing? Because there are reports of the patients turning positive again. What is the health ministry doing about it? So that's a question of reinfection, which we'll come back to Professor for. Another comment here from Keremi Modoni, that it's coming to clear old people. That's a myth that you've heard. Wow, okay. We've also got a comment here from Martin Mutwiri that someone taking alcohol is not likely to get affected by the disease, especially spirits. Well, we've tackled that already. Thank you, Martin. Another one here from Nyakundi Jeremiah, that 1 billion is used per day to take care of coronavirus patients. You're talking about the situation in Kenya, and that talk about how we are spending our corona kitty. Thank you, Jeremiah. We've also got one here from Pedro Kaloki. Cloth masks will protect you against the virus. When we know the virus is approximately 20, what is that? Is a millimeter, and thus the protection efficiency of the cloth mask is about 0%. Okay, and we've got another here from Honorable Job Moenga, that there are still people who haven't realized how deadly the disease is. Yes, we know, we've heard of such people. Nelson Dungo, drinking hot tea helps kill the virus in the body. No, it will only help kill those rumors. Another comment here from Tito, blessings, whether it be a chemical weapon or not, one thing I know, with God I am securely at peace, and diseases have nothing in me. I'm protected by Christ, but Christ also actually requires you to take some action, sensible action, even as you wait for the second coming. We also have V. Max, who says it cannot survive in places with higher temperatures. We've dealt with that. Professor explained that myth to be untrue. Bright Susan Hadassah, you say that it's only infecting the rich. Well, not quite. A lot of people who are hardly rich have caught it. Karonga Wawaigwa, it spreads at night, explaining the night curfew. Really? Well, one for Professor. This is not a night run, a kind of virus. Felix Emmanuel Wandare, it's a demonic attack. We had a program last week with pastors, and they thoroughly dismissed that, that myth. Thank you, Felix, for your feedback, though. Shakur Najma, that everything about this virus is just a conspiracy, even though it's killing thousands worldwide. Well, again, not known to be true. Yes, and there's another here from Nicky Nick. It was made by the US to destroy China, since China was about to overcome them economically. Again, conspiracy theorists at work. And this is Chilufia Mateo. It is found in bat soup and pangolin wet fry. Well, now it's with us, actually, apart from that kind of cuisine. And we have one more here from Joseph Awili. One can catch it and heal even without knowing. Okay, Professor, let me come to reinfections. I know that the US has been worried about possible cases of reinfections, as well as the UK, that even though we may clear this, there could be another wave of infections. Your thoughts on this?
For now, it is not very clear whether there could be a wave of COVID-19 or not. We only saw the issue of the waves with the 1918 influenza pandemic, where it started in January 1918, and by June 1918, the number of people who were infected had dropped drastically. And by October 1918, the virus came back. But I think the situation then was different from the situation now. As we speak now, the measures which have been taken by various governments, including our own government, of introducing restrictions.
Professor, sorry, your line.
Advising people.
I'm really sorry.
To kind of.
Sorry, Professor, your line is dying out, and I'm afraid we're also running out of time. And I just want to close by saying that last week we asked you to show us how you're keeping fit. Here are some of the videos that you responded with.
Local leaders and charity organizations have begun food distribution to fill the gap. In Bungoma County,
Okay, I'm afraid we are out of time. I just want to thank my panel this morning, Claudette Alusa, who is a lab technician, Professor Julius Oyugi, who joined us from Kisumu, and earlier we also had Walter Musije from NTV in Kampala, Uganda. That's all we have time for. We'll be back tomorrow 6:30 a.m. with TZ Nyumbani. That's your chance to exercise with our professional trainers for half an hour till 7 a.m. And then Your World is back. But for now, over to Your World now, for real. Keep yourself safe. Good morning.